All right, so let's talk about let's get something a little more interesting. Let's take a look at the faculty. Now notice that here, faculty and student, they're both inheriting from a top-level user class, right? And typically, you would be asked to use a particular strategy to implement that inheritance mechanism, right? Whether it'll be the single class or the one table per class, or which one of the normalized or the denormalized strategy. Well, here too, JPA can be configured to use one strategy or another strategy. Right? By default, it uses the denormalized strategy. Right? It's the fastest strategy, where all the features, all the properties of the derived classes are inherited by the parent table. Right? So that if you have faculty having other fields, they are moved over to the parent table. So let's do that. Let's play around with a faculty class. Right, so let's copy this here, and let's declare it in the model. Let's see, models, and let's create here new class faculty. And let's replace this, paste it. All right, so notice that it's still an entity. And it extends user, right? Just like you would in a regular Java object-oriented language. Let's bring in the entity. And so faculties, not only do they have first name, last name, username, and password, but they also have an office where they work at and whether they're tenured or not. Right? And let's add a couple of setters and getters to this. So setters and getters. There they are. And let's there we go. All right, so if we restart the server, let's just make sure that we don't have anything here. Let's refresh, and we only have user here. Let's do a Maven clean install. So Maven clean install will do what it did earlier, right? It'll take a look at the current tables, see if it needs to modify anything in the user table. If we added a new field, if we removed the field, right? It'll update the tables accordingly. Plus, it'll identify a new table there, a new class called faculty, and not work. Wait, what happened? Object oh, it would try to run the tests. Oh, it's trying to run the tests. How do I skip over the tests? Anyone remember? Maven skip tests. Bless you. Oh, there it is. All right. Okay, so I built it. Let's go back to our database and let's refresh this. And if you'll notice, user is still there, right? It didn't create a faculty table. But if we open it up and look at the columns, notice that they're slightly different. You'll notice that we still have the ID, first name, last name, password, username, but we have three new columns that were not there. Notice that we have a D type, an office, and a tenure. See that were not there before. Right? So if we send this over and send it to a SQL, you'll notice that we have a denormalized implementation of the inheritance strategy. See that? Okay. Okay. So let's see. Notice that the user table, if we refresh, notice that now we have a couple of fields in there. See that? We have office and tenure. notice that probably running our tests, it did the insert of Dan Brown. See that? But doing that insert, it knew that the data type that was used to instantiate Dan Brown was a user. Right? So notice that for the D type, it added the user string. See that? But for all the other ones, it didn't know what we used. Right? That was before we had any notion of inheritance. Right? But we know we implemented it as user. So we should copy this user for all these. So user, these were all instantiated with user. Okay, we do an apply and an update. Very good. So all those were instantiated with users. Let's try and play around with faculty. If you instantiate a faculty, it should actually just set this to be a faculty and the values for office and tenure, but set them for those two fields. Right, so let's create a repository. So we'll do a repository. So let's do here new class, and this will be faculty repository. And that repository will be not a class, it will be an interface that extends the CRUD repository. And it will be faculty. And this is an integer, which actually we didn't declare the IDs for this, right? So we'll have to do that. So let's go back to faculty. Let's provide the, actually no, we don't need to provide the unique identifier, right? Because the unique identifier is being inherited from the user. The user has the ID, right? So it doesn't need to be re-implemented here again, right? All right, so let's try instantiating a faculty. Let's create another test suite here. Let's copy, and this will be for, oops, wait a minute. Copy, paste, and this will be faculty. Can't type. Test faculty. There we go. So test faculty. And let's try to insert a faculty. So let's see. We'll call this test create faculty. Faculty. So this will be faculty. Geez. Faculty. We'll create Tim. New faculty. So this will be Tim. Username, password Tim, first name Tim, Bernsley. All right, and let's import this. Notice that this faculty, I'm about to save this to the database, right? But even though it's going to be saved to the database, this is not going to be a managed object. Okay, this is still just going to be just a plain old Java object. Right, that has absolutely no idea that it's connected to the database. All right, it'll do the insert, but this itself won't know that it has anything to do with the database. Okay, so we had to create that constructor, and we'll also need the no argument constructor faculty, and we'll have to implement this constructor, which will be something like user. Actually, we are inheriting from user. So probably all these we can pass up to our super constructor. Right, so this will be username. This is the password. This is the first name, and this is the last name. Right. So we can pass that up all to the super constructor. So user, username, password, first name, and last name. Right? Right, so we'll have our super constructor to handle that. What else? Actually, we don't have an office. We should provide that too. So the test faculty. We could create a constructor, right? I guess so. Let's do that. The office is a string, is it? So this is Office A101, and the tenured is true. So let's go back to the constructor and let's fix that. So this is string office and Boolean tenured. And so we can say this dot office is office, and this dot tenure is tenured. Something like that. Make sense? All right, let's try it out. Let's test it. Test the faculty. We'll need the repository. Let's do an auto wired because we want. What do we need here? We need the faculty repository, right? Faculty repository, faculty repository. And then we can then just use save. We can say faculty repository dot save Tim, not time. Right, and that presumably will do the insert into a database. Yes.
Can we insert customized ID manually here?
You can, yes. If we didn't have the auto increment, it would be required.
But if we do have the auto increment ID,
Then no, you can't. Well, it would be ignored. You can pass it in, but it would be ignored. Yeah. All right, so let's try it out. Let's run this this test. So run as unit test. Maybe. All right, so it did an insert into the user table. Let's take a look at that. Let's refresh. And notice that, indeed, we were able to insert Tim Berners-Lee, and we have office and tenure, and the D type is correctly set to faculty. Right? If we had a student, right, that inherits also from user, and it had its own fields, two more fields, it would use the faculty instead of it will use student as a label as opposed to faculty. Right? All right, and we can try that out. If we create a, where is it? If we create a student, faculty repository, user, modeling one-to-many. For student, I'll let you play around with that. All right, let's take a look at modeling one-to-many.